Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is a show that I knew that I was going to like before it was released back in November. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I watched it a lot and I loved every part of it. So when coming into watching Takes Off, I was fully expecting just an animated version of the film with the original comic style that it was based off of, until I actually watched it and saw that everything was changed. At first, I was very confused and a little taken aback at the change that was happening. And I was then just expecting that I wasn't gonna like it, and how I wish that Scott would have come back and I can see more incredible fight scenes. Instead, I found myself drawn to each episode, actually enjoying the developments that were taking place. I had no idea why. I, for one, am a huge nostalgia nerd, and I really don't like change all that much if I haven't made that clear already with my other videos. I had to rewatch the series multiple times over just to really think about and see what about it they've changed that makes me like it so much more, until I made the realization about what I love. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off manages to do something that many other studios have failed to do time and time again. They managed to change their source material entirely to create something even better, and I really want to talk about that. But before I really get into that, I would like to play a little game. Something that I actually just straight ripped off from the NewWorldReview, an amazing anime content creator that you need to stop this video now and go subscribe to. Or else. Scott here is extremely desperate, looking for a girlfriend after Ramona dumped him. He has been looking around forever and ever and have only been able to get the attention from these high school girls. It is up to you to decide which high school girl that this grown-ass man will go on a date on and become a victim. If you choose right, amazing job! You are primarily responsible for the trauma that this girl will have when she becomes an adult, and you will be directly responsible for her therapy pills. But if you chose wrong, then Scott will move in with you after being kicked out of Wallace's place, and you will be forced to like and subscribe for the channel for more content like this in your feed. Choose now, and I'll reveal the answer in 3, 2, 1. And it was actually knives that was the correct answer. Again, if you chose right, amazing work. Go down in the comments below with your mailing address so that Knives knows where to send the bills. If you chose wrong though, still go down with your home address so that Scott can pack up his things and start heading over, as well as you have to like and subscribe, of course. Thank you very much, and now, back to the video. Alright, let's start this off with a little summary of the original movie that was based on the comics story-wise. Scott Pilgrim is some dude from Toronto that is dating a literal high schooler. He's in a band and has dreams about this one girl that has short colored hair. He meets this girl and starts two-timing Knives and the girl Ramona. Turns out that Ramona has a league of evil exes that all of her ex relationships are a part of and that are meant to protect Ramona's love life and essentially kill everyone who's trying to date Ramona. Over the course of the entire 2-hour-long movie, we get to see him fight and defeat all 7 exes with some but not real much bonding / character development throughout the film, and in the end he works out all of his own problems and is able to date Ramona happily ever after. That is a really gross generalization of the movie, and you really should go watch it if you haven't. It's not an absolutely amazing film that should win every award ever and be taught in film schools, but it is a very entertaining watch, and the actors and actresses are absolutely amazing for their roles. The film is great, the animation effects in it are not the greatest but are still unique and fun to see, and you will have a genuinely amazing time watching it. But that's not the point here. The point is that I really like the film. But there are some heavy criticisms of it that I really dislike about it now rewatching it for the first time in a while. The film is very straightforward. You go from one ex to the next to the next and blah blah blah, and then the movie is over. In the short runtime the movie had, there was way too much to throw in to actually have time to really think in between. The movie stayed at a breakneck pace with no slowing down in between, showing the part of the film that I really disliked on rewatch. That being that there was very little to no character development. The movie was about 2 hours long, and yet everything felt very rushed in the end. Which really, in a way, I don't think there was much they could have done about that. They have to fit in 6 different scenarios that Scott has to take part in, and he so happens to stumble upon and then fight all of the X's. As well as on top of that, he has to have his own development, other characters' development, and then wrapping the story together behind all of what was happening. There is so much going on and so little time to actually develop anybody's characters to their fullest extent. It creates sort of a bland villainy that could become boring to watch. And that's the core problem with the main movie. The core problem that Scott Pilgrim Takes Off fundamentally fixes and creates a masterpiece of a story in its own. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is an entirely different story than the movie. Almost literally everything once the first Evil X is introduced changes for the better. In the movie, Scott defeats Matthew Patel and moves on to the next and blah blah blah. In the show, however, Matthew Patel actually defeats Scott, and afterwards we literally don't see him until episode 6 where he reveals himself again. Just an entirely different story altogether. In Takes Off, the story instead revolves around Ramona trying to search and find for Scott after getting a hint that he might still be alive. The entire series is her going through tips and hints about where Scott might be and trying to get him back. These hints and such lead her to going through each of the X's and talking to them about Scott and where he may be, which allows the show to actually sit down and show some actual development in the X's and their characters, the precise thing that was wrong with the original film. Every episode is essentially dedicated to one of the X's and some hijinks that happen in every episode. These episodes, rather than fighting, include much needed character development and dialogue that was drastically missing from the original movie. In the show, the X's are actual characters rather than cool-faced bad guys that are just beaten and then moved to the side forever. Lucas Lee starts off as an arrogant movie actor that actually kind of moved on from Ramona a while ago and has no real qualms with Scott and just kind of wants to do his own thing as a movie star. He even goes as far as to protect Ramona. We even get to see his backstory and his motivations on wanting to become a movie star, being tied back to Ramona and his relationship ending, and him feeling alone after the breakup. He is grateful for Ramona rather than spiteful and hating. That day you made me who I am. It shows much more to him as a character than just a horrible, evil person that's just spiteful enough to try to kill a potential new boyfriend to Ramona. Todd starts off as another arrogant character. He's extremely powerful with his vegan powers and is hooking up with Envy Adams, but not in a relationship way, more just sort of a hooking up thing sort of way, kinda weird thing. But in the show, we actually learn that he's actually way more than just a cool, jock-like character, and we actually learn with him that he's a raging bisexual while hooking up with Wallace Wells. Here, he learns more about heartbreak and those sparks that weren't always a two-way street. He learns to accept rejection and grows as a person from it. Roxy starts off as a hateful and spiteful character that is full of rage against Ramona herself. She actually is hateful to those trying to get with her as well, with the "if I can't have her, nobody can" mindset. She barges in and tries to kill Ramona and fight her herself. And of course, while fighting, we get development and a story about her and Ramona's relationship. Roxy is the way she is because she feels betrayed. She feels left out and just abandoned by Ramona during her college fling. Roxy felt like this was a real relationship, something that really was both ways. But then Ramona sort of just left without saying a word. Nothing at all except a small wave as she just leaves her there all alone. Roxy felt horrible and then channeled that abandoned feeling into anger against Ramona, in which Ramona herself realizes this and apologizes to Roxy. Ramona understands and even explains that she's in the wrong, and that she should have talked to Roxy about the situation instead of just abandoning her there. Roxy here gets her closure and finds her happiness in the situation. She becomes less of a hateful person towards Ramona and now has grown and learned from this experience herself. I originally thought that Matthew Patel didn't really go through any change until I was skimming the episodes just now. He actually does have a gradual change throughout the series. Again, Matthew actually does start off the series the way he does in the film, being a vindictive ex that just wants to get back with Ramona. But after being rejected by Ramona after defeating Scott, he actually goes back and challenges Gideon to a duel for everything that he has, and then goes on and beats Gideon due to his newfound confidence after defeating Scott. After defeating Gideon, he really doesn't want to get back with Ramona anymore, and just sort of says, "Oh, hi Ramona," whenever he sees her. He is more invested with the idea of his image, and then later is just more invested in becoming a Broadway star than defeating Scott for a second time. This newfound confidence has more so allowed him to focus on himself rather than obsessing over the past. Gideon goes through a lot of emotion throughout the series. He is the other vindictive ex alongside Matthew at the beginning of the series. He's the all-powerful final ex, but gets beaten down by Matthew, the first ex, at episode 1, and loses everything he's ever worked for. He then becomes essentially a willing slave to Julie, as he's lost all of his motivation to try to get anything back, and is super down on himself for losing it all. But he then gets his motivation back from Julie trying to get him back on his feet to make him evil again. It's less of a development than the others, but it's still a small one of being able to accept help from others and getting back up after failure. And then there are the twins that actually don't really get much development, other than kind of just being chill dudes that help Scott later, so maybe there was some acceptance in life? Not sure, but that's besides the point. And those were just the exes. There are still other characters like Knives that get a lot of screen time with her accepting being cheated on / dumped. There's Wallace that goes through the development with the fling with Todd, and then later finding the sparks that he kept rejecting throughout the series. There's Kim also reminiscing on the past with Scott and how she accepted their relationship ending. And then there's one more character in particular that gets a lot more screen time and much needed development. Ramona was very much a side character in the movie version. While she was in the film a lot, there were so many things that were left out of her character that were absolutely highlighted in the show. The most important being her tendency to run away from the things she loved and her problems than to face them head on. We get that theme throughout the series quite a lot, and more specifically and literally when it comes to Roxy and her relationship. I mean, she literally ran away rather than confronting the problem that was there. She just up and left Roxy alone and abandoned her. She did the same more or less for all of her exes, and there was very little to no closure up until they met again for any of them. Ramona throughout the series is slowly learning and confronting the problems she was running away from, and developing her character throughout. It goes even more literal with her seeing her future self in the final episode of the series, and literally says that she's going to stop running away from her problems and fuses with her future self to restore everything back to normal. It's just a message that was more or less lost in the original film that was done outstandingly well in the show. It made Ramona more of a real character than just a pretty face for Scott to fight for. And now, of course, there is one last character that I do want to talk about. This video has gone on for way too long, so I'm gonna make this quick. Scott is quick to blame others for his losses. While we don't really get to see that until the last episode where we see future Scott, he just refuses to believe that he is in the wrong for the relationship between him and Ramona ending. He blames her and obsesses over it so much that he steals Scott from the past to make sure that he doesn't make the same mistake again by dating Ramona. He refuses to elaborate and ridicules Ramona when she comes to try and save Scott. In which we then see Ramona's development, and then we see a little bit of Scott's development too, that he has the whole, you need to let me live my life scenario. He needs to learn from his mistakes and grow from them rather than letting them pester and overcome his life. Which we don't see if he actually does that in the end, but we certainly kinda tell that he might. Overall, the show is absolutely outstanding compared to the movie. The movie was good, and is still one of my top favorites from nostalgia alone, but the show just blows it out of the park in general and makes pretty much the entire new series. The show is full of absolutely lovable characters, amazing animation, great writing, and just a whole lot of heart and soul that were put into the project that you can just tell. God, there's so much more I can talk about, but I really do need to wrap up this video. If you made it this far and haven't watched it, well, you may have been spoiled quite a lot. It's still an amazing watch, and you need to go watch it right now. And, that's all I got. I love this show, and this was meant to be a short script and video, but here we are on par in some of the longer videos I make, so that's nice, I guess. But anyways, I'm actually curious on what you guys think of the show in general. Do you love it? Hate it? Just sort of eh? Did you actually enjoy that it switched up the entire story, or are you really disappointed? Let me know in the comments below, and actually, if you don't mind, while you're down there, could you hit that like and subscribe button for me? It really helps me out in the long run and shows me exactly what kind of content you would like to see from me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.